Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're diving deep into a really specific part of a foundational text for understanding Kundalini Yoga in the West, Arthur Avalon's The Serpent Power.
That's right. And we're not tackling the whole thing. Our focus is very tight. Section 5, the centers or lotuses, Chakra, Padma, specifically pages 103 through 180.
Okay, so our mission here really is to unpack what this section says about these energy centers, the chakras.
Exactly. What does this text, these pages tell us they are? Where are they? What's the symbolism? And crucially, what role do they play in the Kundalini Yoga system described right here?
Think of this as getting the core download on the chakras, but purely through the lens of this specific translation and tradition, pulling it straight from these pages.
Let's get into it.
So, just to set the scene a little, the Serpent Power is, it's known for presenting these detailed accounts of Tantric practices. It draws heavily on texts like the Ṣaṭcakra Nirupana.
And this section we're zeroing in on, 103 to 180, it's really dedicated solely to describing those 6 main centers within the subtle body, plus the Sahasrara at the top.
Okay, so the first big idea the text hits us with is that these centers, these chakras, they aren't physical organs like, say, your liver or heart in Western medicine.
Right. Avalon, interpreting the source text, describes them as focal points, centers of etheric or vital force, of consciousness, and they exist within the subtle body. You see this framing right away at page 7, 105, again on 162.
And the text mentions they're often visualized symbolically, usually as lotuses, Padmas, which definitely reinforces that idea of something energetic, not quite solid structure.
Absolutely. It's about visualization. And where does this subtle structure supposedly exist?
Well, they're situated along the Sushumna. This is described as the central channel running within the spinal column, but in the subtle body, not the physical one. That's on pages 105, 159.
Yeah, and the text even gets quite specific. It mentions a tiny central canal inside the Sushumna called the Brahmanadi. Page 105 mentions this. So it's mapping a kind of subtle anatomy.
It is. But, the book does try to connect it to the physical. It notes correspondences.
It does. It says these subtle centers correspond to physical regions, yeah. And they're associated with the parts of the nervous system, the sympathetic cord, ganglia, various plexuses, that's scattered across pages like 105, 106, 108, 154, 162.
There's even that specific reference on page 105 to a Dr. Cunningham and his observations on gray matter in the filum terminale.
Wow.
Trying to find a physical anchor, perhaps?
Exactly. It attempts to find these physical correlates. But, and this is really crucial, the text itself states this on page 158, these physical localizations, this should be considered tentative.
Tentative, okay.
Yeah. The primary reality, the function of these centers within this specific tradition seems really rooted in that subtle, energetic dimension. That's a key thing this section keeps emphasizing.
Right. That distinction is important. Let's hold on to that as we actually look at the centers themselves. We should probably go bottom up. Start with the foundation, the Muladhara chakra.
Sounds good. The Muladhara, the root center. According to this section, its location is the spinal center below the genitals, page 141.
And visually.
It's a lotus, described as having 4 petals, also page 141.
Okay. And each center has these associated tattvas, these fundamental elements or principles. What's the tattva here?
Prithivi, that's earth. Page 141 again. Right. Qualities linked to it are cohesion, stability, and stimulating the sense of smell.
Smell, interesting. And the text even lists specific Sanskrit letters on the petals, right? Va, sha, sha, sha.
It does, page 141. And the significance of Muladhara is huge in this system. This section clearly states it's the seat of Kundalini Shakti herself.
Ah, the serpent power itself.
Yes, depicted as coiled, like a serpent, just waiting there. You see mentions on pages 11, 35, 41, 105. It's even called the root mula of mantra, the origin point of sound and energy potential, page 46.
Wow. Okay, so the absolute foundation.
Moving up from there, along the Sushumna, the text brings us to the Svadhisthana chakra.
Svadhisthana, where's that located?
Spinal region, just above the genitals, page 141. And this one's described as a lotus with 6 petals.
6 petals. And the tattva?
Apas. Water, also page 141. Its qualities, contraction and stimulating the sense of taste.
Taste for water, smell for earth.
Ah.
Okay. Letters.
Ba, ma, ya, ra, la. You start to see this incredibly detailed symbolic mapping building up.
Definitely. Next up, the Manipura chakra.
That's the one. Located in the spinal center region of the navel, page 141. Visualize this one as a lotus with 10 petals.
10 petals, navel region, element.
Tejas, fire. page 141. And its qualities are described as expansion, generating heat, and stimulating the sense of color and form, or sight.
Sight for fire. Makes sense. Letters.
Da, da, na, ta, 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 pa, fa. It's all listed in that table on 141, 142.
And symbolically, this one's often linked to the sun, isn't it? Page 146 mentions that.
Yes, the sun. And crucially, the text notes it contains the fire bija, that powerful seed syllable ram. Pages 96 and 142 mention ram. It's like the concentrated essence of that fire element.
Okay, ascending further, we arrive at the Anahata Chakra.
Anahata, found in the spinal center region of the heart, page 141. This lotus is described with 12 petals.
12 petals. Heart region. Tattva.
Vayu, air. Page 141. Associated with, well, general movement and stimulating the sense of touch.
Touch for air. Got it. Letters.
Ka, ka, ga, 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 cha, 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 ya, sa, ta, ta, ta. All on page 141.
And just like Manipura linked to the sun, this one, Anahata, is often symbolically linked to the wind, right? Page 146 again. Reflects that air element.
Exactly. You see the pattern.
Right. Getting higher now, the Vishuddha Chakra.
Vishuddha. Located in the spinal center region of the throat, page 141, visualized as a lotus with 16 petals.
16 petals. That's the most so far among these main 6.
It is. Its tattva is akasha ether, or space, page 141. The quality it provides is space itself, and it stimulates the sense of hearing.
Hearing for ether space. And the letters here are unique.
Yes, page 141 says its petals are associated with all the Sanskrit vowels. Very significant.
And symbolically.
Linked to the moon, page 146 mentions, and it contains the ether bija, ham, that's on page 122. You can really feel a connection here to subtle sound, space, communication, hearing.
Okay, the last of the 6 main centers along the Sushumna, Ajna Chakra.
Ajna. Now, this one's location is slightly different. It's in the center of the region between the eyebrows, page 141.
The third eye area. And petals.
Just 2, a big contrast to Vishuddha 16, also page 141.
Interesting. And the tattva here isn't one of the gross elements like earth or fire.
No. Here, it's manas, representing the mental faculties, the mind, page 141. Its 2 petals carry the letters ha and krisha.
And the text gives Ajna huge significance, doesn't it?
Absolutely profound. It's described as the causal region, the abode of the supreme Bindu Parashiva, page 141, the seat of Ishvara, the higher self, page 128. It's really presented as this major convergence point for subtle energy and higher consciousness.
So that's the 6 along the spine, or Sushumna. But the system doesn't stop there. It culminates in the Sahasrara.
The Sahasrara, the 1,000-petaled lotus.
Where is that located?
Top of that. The cerebrum area. You find this referenced on pages 1148, 143, 145. And yes, it's visualized, true to its name, as a lotus with 1,000 petals. Pages 141, 143, 145 confirm that.
1,000.
Yeah. And this is presented as the ultimate destination for the rising Kundalini. The text calls it the abode of Ishvara, of the united Shiva Shakti, the seat of the aggregate Kundali and the Jiva, the individual soul. Page 143.
So it's considered beyond those lower 6 centers.
Definitely. It's the goal of the whole journey described in the text. Pages 11, 18, 27, 143 all point to this. It's depicted as the place of, well, supreme consciousness and ultimate union.
It's just striking how much detailed symbolism is packed into every single one of these centers. We've mentioned the petals, the letters, but the text layers on even more, right? Specific colors, geometric shapes called mandalas, animal carriers, specific deities.
Oh, absolutely. And those Bīja Mantras, the seed syllables like ram and ham we mentioned, it's all there in the descriptions and the table on pages 141, 142, plus discussions on pages like 83, 92, 96.
And the text presents these not just as like arbitrary symbols, but as integral parts.
Exactly. They're described as elements contained within or deeply associated with each specific center and its corresponding tattva. It's presented as this complete system, a way of mapping the microcosm, the individual, to the macrocosm, the universe, all within the subtle body structure.
And all this incredibly detailed description, it obviously serves a purpose within the actual practice of Kundalini yoga that the text is explaining.
Precisely. You can't really grasp the process described without understanding these centers. The core practice detailed here is the rousing of that coiled energy, Kundalini Shakti, down at the Muladhara.
The serpent power.
And its ascent. Its dramatic journey upwards through the Sushumna channel, where it's described as piercing or activating each chakra one by one. Pages 11, 18, 21 really emphasize this ascent.
So moving through the centers isn't just, moving from A to B. It's tied to changes in consciousness.
Yes, exactly. The text links the passage through each center with attaining different levels of awareness, different states of consciousness, and also with realizing the essential nature of those tattvas, those elements we talked about. That's touched on in pages 18, 41, 162.
And the ultimate goal, again,
Is that union. The union of the awakened Kundalini Shakti with the principle of Shiva waiting in the Sahasrara. And this union, according to pages 11, 18, and 27, leads to liberation, moksha, or supreme bliss. So the centers are like crucial milestones or gateways on this profound, energetic, and spiritual path.
there's another fascinating layer too, connecting sound to the centers, Shabda.
Yes, sound. The text links it directly. It presents this concept of sound energy, Shabda Brahman, which originates way down in the Muladhara.
The root of mantra.
Right. And this sound energy manifests through different levels or stages as Kundalini ascends. The text names them: Para, Pashanti, Madhyama, and Vaikari. You find this discussion around pages 96, 170, 173.
Okay, that sounds complex. What are those levels?
Well, Para is described as the most subtle, unmanifest causal sound. Pashanti is like a visualized or potential sound. Madhyama is mental sound, thought. And Vaikari is the final stage, audible, spoken sound.
So it's showing how this fundamental energy transforms into vibration and then sound as it moves up through the system.
That's the idea. It connects the subtle energy flow directly to the manifestation of sound. And this is why those letters on the petals are so significant.
Oh, okay. How so?
They're seen, according to pages 83, 92, 96, as subtle forms of this shabda, this sound energy. It implies this fundamental link between the energy centers, consciousness itself, and the inherent power of subtle vibration and sound within this whole system. It's incredibly intricate.
Now, it is important to remember, and Avalon himself points this out, that this is one specific presentation. He mentions on pages 7 and 158 that, other tantric texts might have slightly different details. Maybe variations in location or the specifics of the symbolism.
That's a fair point, and he does acknowledge it. Our deep dive today, though, has really focused laser-like on this detailed picture presented right here in Section 5 of the Serpent Power, just as the text lays it out. Page 158 makes that focus clear.
Right. So we get a very clear, if complex, snapshot from this particular influential source.
So yeah, we've journeyed from the Muladhara base up through the 6 main centers to the Sahasrara peak. We've looked at their locations in the subtle body, the incredibly rich symbolism, tattvas, letters, deities, bījas, and their absolutely vital role in the ascent of Kundalini Shakti.
All drawn specifically from those key pages, 103 to 180, of Avalon's work.
And what really stands out, I think, is the sheer depth of this mapping. You have cosmological ideas, psychological states, subtle physiology, all meticulously layered onto these specific points within the subtle body.
It's far more than just a simple diagram of energy points. It's presented as a complete symbolic framework, a way to understand consciousness, energy, the path to liberation.
Exactly, a sophisticated, multi-layered system based on the practices described.
So here's something to think about, maybe. How does engaging with this level of intricate detail, the specific number of petals for each lotus, the exact Sanskrit letters assigned, the particular elements and deities, the detailed description of the Sushumna, and even the Brahmanadi within it, how does that challenge or maybe deepen your understanding compared to perhaps simpler or more generalized ideas about chakras you might have come across?
Yeah, does seeing it laid out like this in such textual detail invite you to think about these energy centers less as vague concepts and more as components within a very specific, ancient, and highly detailed map? A map of the subtle body of consciousness as presented through this particular traditional lens. It certainly raises fascinating questions about how subtle energy, consciousness, and even the physical form were viewed and interconnected in this system.